5 o'clock p.m. And we are going to call to order the meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals for March 5th, 2025. We have 6 members present. It takes a quorum of 4 for any approvals for any of the variances. Today we have one petitioner with 2 variance requests. A couple of housekeeping items. If you are representing the petitioner, you come to the microphone right in front of me, state your name and address, and you can talk a little bit more about the requests. If you're a member of the public and you wish to speak either in favor or in opposition to the area variance request, during the public comment section, you can go to either of the microphones in the audience, and you have up to 5 minutes. At this point, I will have the clerk read the petition request.
Notice is hereby given that the Zoning Board of Appeals of the City of Jamestown, New York will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, March 5th, 2025 at 5 o'clock p.m. in the City Council Chambers, Municipal Building, 200 East 3rd Street, Jamestown, New York, to consider the following. The petition of Gateway Loft Supportive Apartments, LP, and Southern Tier Environments for Living, Inc., 715 Central Avenue, Dunkirk, New York, 14048, for 2 area variances on parcels 387.50-1-21, 22.1, 22.2, 23.1, 23.2, 25.1, 26.1, 27, 28, 54, 55, and 56, and at 31, 53, and 55 Water Street, owned by Community Helping Hands in an M zone. Section 300-0506, parking. 251 spaces are required, proposed is 148. Section 300-0502 F3, in all M districts, all automotive use areas shall be set back at least 5 feet from all property lines, except that where said area abuts any R district. It shall be set back at least 10 feet from all property lines. Proposed is 4.4 feet on the west property line.
Thank you. Is there someone from the company that wants to speak? Please state your name and address. And you could talk a little bit more about the request for these 2 area variances.
Yes, good afternoon. Lindsay Habenreich from Phillips Lytle, and the attorney for the project applicant. Also with me here today is Stephen Auld from the project applicant, Robin Sterniak from GPI, the project engineers, and Joe Gibbons from SWBR, the project architects. They're also available should you have any questions that require their expertise. So before I get into the details of the variance, I just wanted to provide a brief history of this project, as it is not a new one before the city or before this board, but it has been some time. So as some of you may recall and may have been on the board at the time, the project went through a fulsome approval process between 2018 and 2020. A variance starting with the planning board. A variance application was submitted to the Zoning Board of Appeals in early 2020, and though for 2 variances, and those 2 variances were approved in July of 2020. Since then, the applicant did seek and obtain extensions of that approval request, but then unfortunately the applications, the approvals have lapsed, which brings us to why we're here today, asking for those 2 variances to be reapproved, although I will note there have been no project changes since they were approved in 2020. So developer is and has been committed to this project since those project approvals were issued, but there have been delays due to project financing. So due to COVID, as was the case for many projects, the project lost its initial investor, and that required them to go back to the drawing board, find a new investor, and sort of restart the process of getting the project financed. That has taken some time, but developer is now nearing the finish line, we hope, and anticipates completing its applications with the New York State Housing Financing Agency, the County of Chautauqua Industrial Development Agency, the New York State Empire State Development in the near future. And I will note we also have a secondary funding application that is due in late March that requires all of our project approvals to be in place in order to be eligible to apply. And if we do not meet that deadline, we will not be able to apply until next year. So we are moving the ball forward with financing and hope that in spring of 2026 we can start construction. So the project itself is an adaptive reuse of a portion of the existing Gateway Center that will be used for multi-family affordable and supportive housing. Based on the project developer's efforts here, the building has been designated as eligible for listing on the state and national register of historic places. This project will be developed with historic tax credits, and therefore all of the redevelopment will be done in accordance with the Federal Department of Interior standards for historic buildings. There will be a total of 110 units for this project, a mix of studio 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments. About half of those units, 56 of them, will be supported with funding from the New York Empire State Supportive Housing Initiative, and that is reserved for persons with special needs. And then the other half, about 54 units, will be provided for low to moderate income residents. There are a number of small structures, including 2 residences at 53 and 54 Water Street, that will be demolished, and that was part of the planning approval process last time in order to make more green space on the site. There will be construction of a playground, expansion of green space, walkways, picnics, fencing area, lots of improvements, and lots of increased green space along the riverfront. So why are we here before you? 2 variances were required last time, they are required this time. As I said, there have been no project changes. The first one is a reduction in the number of parking spaces. Based on the square footage, the code requires 251 spaces. We are proposing 148. We are not anticipating to have a high demand for parking based on the type of residences that will be living here. And in discussions with the planning board last time around, they wanted there to be more green space and less emphasis on parking. And I will note that based on the parking we have, we are expecting to have an excess of at least 34 parking spaces already. So we do have ample parking spaces even with this required variance. And so having this reduction does allow greater green space. It allows us to put a playground in and enhance services for the project as a whole and the residents that will be living there. The second variance is for a reduction in the automotive use area setback. The code requires 5 feet. I will note that we are asking for a variance of 4.4 feet. However, the existing condition is 0 feet. So we are actually improving this condition from 0 to 4.4, but still need that about half-foot variance needed for the project. And this will help to improve conditions by reducing this overall, existing nonconformity that we can at least clean up a little bit. That's all I have for my project overall. We believe that based on the project as a whole, the balancing weighs in favor of the applicant of this project moving forward, and we are happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Are there questions from the board?
I have one.
Yes.
Thank you. There's a number of agencies housed in that building on the first floor. I believe Mental Health Association, St. Susan's Kitchen, and Big Helping Hands still. Do you have a figure on the number of people they employed and how many parking spaces they might require?
I'm going to ask Stephen Auld to come up. You want to answer?
Before you answer the question, make sure you state your name and address.
Hi, Stephen Auld, 8036 Dennis Road, Acorn, New York. No, we didn't, I don't recall having any statistics on how many employees are needing parking for St. Susan's. Or you're correct, the agencies are St. Susan's Kitchen, Metcalfe County Mental Health Association, and Community Helping Hands. Those are the current tenants there.
Okay, so the estimate in parking, which you're proposing, was based on the anticipated residents and a number of them not having automobiles. That's what you anticipate. But there was not.
Other people involved in the project did take into account the number of non-residential spaces that would be needed
Okay.
for the non-residential uses, but I don't have that information.
Thank you.
We did look into that at the time of the original applied for the variance and felt comfortable with the number.
Yeah, and I'll just note that there was a traffic study prepared as part of the original project approval that was before the planning board. So this is based on, you know, an engineer taking a look at the anticipated uses, square footages, code requirements, and making this determination on that there would be an excess of about 35 spaces.
All right, thank you.
Just a question on the financing, is that coming along? Are you starting from scratch again, or?
No, we didn't have to start from scratch. We lost our investor, which is, you can't proceed without an investor, but all the other funding sources were still in place. And then about January, December of the year before, so December of '23 it was, we finally were contacted by an investor that was interested, you know, worked the deal with them, you know, got them satisfied by about January of '24, and then went to the state. The next step with the state, they actually said, oh, we thought this was a dead project, because we hadn't come to them for so long. But when we came back, they were like, okay, well, the next step is called site suitability, and we had to go through site suitability again, and we finally got site suitability approval towards the end of the summer of '24, and then they put us off till the beginning of the year, and then in January they came back and said, okay, we're ready for you to submit your full application with the new investor, and so now we're working on that, which according to the timelines that they set for such things, we anticipate being able to be complete and have all sources of funding committed by the first quarter of 2026. We have some new sources of funding too that we didn't have before. Some old sources that they never went away, but we've been able to add some new sources. You know, costs have gone up significantly since 2020 to now. Costs of construction have gone up considerably. We've added Chautauqua County IDA. They're putting in $325,000 immediately that we're going to use right away to do some remediation on the site. That's more urgent than the rest of the remediation. And then also New York State, Empire State Development recently gave us $1.2 million that we're putting into the mix. We won't use that money until the rest of the project goes, but that's new money into the project. And right now, we have an application that we're working on that's due March 21st for $2 million. And that's the application that we have to have all of our local approvals done in order to get that money. And so that's the sense of urgency that we have right now is to get that $2 million that we didn't have before, to lock that in, because they only let you apply once per year, so we'd be having to put things out for another year if we wanted to wait for that money.
Other questions?
I just have a question for Alan or Larry, perhaps. I don't know if you know the answer, but if we were to approve this variance today, is there any way that we could extend the approval beyond a year so that if something occurs, they don't have to go back in another year?
Well, the only way we can do it, we can't extend the variance, but there is a regulation that the variance is, there's a time frame before they apply for building permit. And once they apply for the building permit, that can be extended, and I do have the ability to change time frames. So we may be pulling a permit a year before schedule, but we're following, you know, we can avoid this scenario for a fifth time or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And,
Larry, what would be the wording for that, as if we agree to approve the variance extension?
you just would agree to it, I mean, because in the zoning code, it does stop saying then, you know, the time frame when you can get a permit.
Okay.
I do believe though that the code states construction has to begin within a year.
Alright, so there's nothing we can do. Okay. Alright.
We still may have to do another extension, but when you mentioned, Stephen, that construction isn't scheduled to start until spring of '26, is that correct?
January of '26 would be the earliest possible, although, you know, that's, you know, from now, it looks like that's possible, you know, it's a lot of time for something to go wrong, and, you know, so if it was put off to, you know, a couple of months from January, I wouldn't be surprised, but as of right now, January of '26 is still possible.
Okay, and any other questions then? I just have a couple of follow-up questions. Number one, the money that you're getting from the IDA is for, I think, brownfield cleanup, is that correct?
Yes, it's called, the building, has some, bad things underneath of it that cause vapors to come up through the building. And so we're putting in what's called a sub-slab depressurization system, which takes the air and like lets it go up over the roof line, and rather than going up through the building.
So that funding is not for the new construction, but actually has to be done prior to.
That the DEC asked us to do as soon as possible, and so we're doing it now. But it will be considered part of the larger project.
Okay. And then you mentioned the cost increase. What's the estimated cost if you go to construction in January of '26?
It's approximately $77 million total project cost.
7.7?
77.
77 million.
That's including the residential, commercial, and brownfield cleanup. That's, you know, soft costs, you know, that's not just hard costs of construction, that's like paying the architect and, you know, attorneys, you know, accountants, everybody, it's a total project cost.
And the same partners are still in this project that you have brought in before,
Yes.
correct?
Yes, the YWCA and STEL are going to be the service providers, and Community Helping Hands is going to be the owner and operator of the non-residential portion of the project.
Any other questions at this time from the board? Seeing none, this is the time for public comment. Again, if somebody would like to speak on this project, the two variance requests, they need to state their name and home address at one of the microphones and have 5 minutes to speak. Anyone in the audience who wishes to speak? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public comment section. Is there any correspondence on this?
There was none received.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions, follow-up questions from members of the board? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion for an extension of the 2 area variance requests for the Gateway Loft Supportive Apartments.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Canabianco.
Second.
And seconded, thank you. Are there questions on the motion? Again, this would be for an extension of the same 2 area variances that we have requested or approved before in 2020 and extended 4 times. Okay, seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Kenyon?
Yes.
Mr. Miraglia?
Yes.
Mr. Panamico?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
And Chairwoman DeTanto?
Yes. Thank you. Your extension again has been approved. Please make sure that you keep us in the loop, and we appreciate the work you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Seeing no other agenda items, we will close the meeting.